So welcome everyone to this Clubhouse event. Your energy, your health, be responsible with empowering solutions. That's what we have, solutions for any issues and anything that comes up, and it's all related to energy. All right. So I would like to start by raising the vibration in the space that we are in now by calling for the highest possible vibration and calling for the truth to come forward into our discussion so that the truth can be seen, heard, and spoken, and that we all be in that frequency of truth and have nothing but the truth. Shall we call for the divine feminine to bring balance back into our world, showing us the way through honor, respect, and gratitude, and calling for the highest possible vibration. I now ask for everyone to take a sip of water as water holds memory, and ask for the water to hydrate our brain and body. All right, so now let us now take a deep breath in, bringing in peace, joy, and gratitude and life, and exhaling out, releasing all stress and worry, all that does not serve you. And Lakesh Veritas, everyone, I call for the oneness and truth of the information shared by each of us on this call, calling in that frequency of truth so that we all can experience all that is. That is the truth, as it is our purpose to bring forward the truth so that we can all benefit from this information shared with honor, respect, and gratitude to you all. The greeting en Lakesh signifies unity, where everything is related to one another, where everything and everyone is connected. It is the idea of community where we can share with one another our ideas, goals, aspirations, so that we all, as one, can benefit and thrive. And Lakesh is that declaration in which we are clearing our spaces, the space we are in now, so that we may be able to bring in a truthful, elevated, and enlightened discussion this evening, clearing away those thoughts that we tend to pick up and carry with us from our everyday life experiences. The words en Lakesh and Veritas is a powerful affirmation that assists in bringing clarity and a greater understanding of truth to all who are present and to all who are listening. Our words have power, so let us remember and decide to use our words carefully, using words of upliftment, encouragement, and enlightenment. By doing so, as a collective, we will help us to transform our spaces and places into higher frequencies and better experiences for each and every one of us here, as well as for those who we touch. So, en Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, with honor, respect, and gratitude. Before we begin, I'd like for everyone to hold your water in your hands. Hold it again. And I would now ask that everyone here, with intention in mind, send the frequency of en Lakesh to your water. And then take a sip of the water. We are 70% water, and the water holds information and memory, thereby assisting in incorporating this elevated frequency of en Lakesh into our cells and into the subatomic space within our bodies. This is all quantum physics. By doing this technique, we will allow for the ease and flow of the information we'll be sharing with one another here this evening. Before we begin our discussion, I just want to remind everyone that you can access the recording of this Clubhouse event and recordings from prior Clubhouse events on Vimeo and YouTube by searching en Lakesh Studios. And please remember to subscribe if you have not already done so. You can also find more information and content on the enlakeshstudio2.com website. So you can keep and get on, when you're on the website, you can keep up to date with information and content that's continuously being added. All right, let's get to the discussion. So a few weeks ago, we spoke about that there was an increase in the number of mass shootings in this country. And the most impactful was the shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, California, where the shooter killed 19 children and adults. And then the shooter killed himself. So, it was just one of those impactful events, violent mass shootings. So, we're going to come back to this story a little later in the discussion and discuss its relevance to what we're talking about today. So, last week, we had a very, very enlightened discussion regarding the education of our children in our current educational system, which led to a discussion of homeschooling as an option in educating our children and what it looks like. So, leading that discussion last week was Tiffany and Stacy, where they both provided great, valuable information. They are here today again because there's more information to be shared that's needed to be shared, and more information that we can share with each other. I myself, along with others who shared with me after the Clubhouse event, told me that they found this discussion helpful because many of us either experience some of the stories that they shared with us or have seen others and other children who are affected by this, other children and families, regarding some of the discrepancies in our educational system that affected us. So I just had to bring them back to continue our discussion and to allow for those others who have stories to come and share in a discussion, and discuss potential options and talk about solutions, what we can do to move forward, to help our children because they are our future. So welcome back, Tiffany and Stacy. We have some unfinished business to discuss when it comes to educating our
Yes.
children.
In the Kitchen Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. Thank you for
And La
having us
Kitchen
back.
Veritas. Oh yeah, and La Kitchen Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. All right. So, we talked about, how our children are so impressionable and how education can affect their self-esteem. And we discussed how a lot of our children who don't fall under the alignment of the quote unquote cookie cutter education that's in our current system, educational system, how it affects them, and how it affects how their outlook on themselves and how they view the future. And we also talked about a potential solution as homeschooling. That's one solution, and how we can teach our children to be sovereign and stand on their own.
One thing that I'm sorry, do you have more to add
No,
to
no.
that, Delilah?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
One thing that I was thinking about a lot after last week's discussion, I sat down and wrote and wrote and wrote because I just wanted to continue talking for like 10 hours about it. It's such a great topic. And there are so many things to bring forward. But one thing I started thinking about a lot after last week's discussion was when Stacy brought forward that idea that science in elementary schools is like 90 hours a week, and the upper grades in middle school and high school, sometimes it's even an hour or 90 minutes a day, and electives sometimes the same thing. They're very short-lived, or it's for 1 hour a day. And I started to really pay attention to what I was doing with my daughter every day and realize that some of the things that are overlooked are the most important. I mean, something that in all of my schooling was never even brought forward in any science class was that we are energy. And that our
Mm,
thoughts are energy, and
mm,
that we have energetic bodies that have colors associated with them that then also connect to the colors of food that we eat and to musical notes, and so there's this whole and that information in and of itself can shift somebody's experience emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, through the course of their entire life, and can help guide them. And so I think that one opportunity that homeschool has really provided us and our family is to bring forward what's either not taught in traditional schools, or what's taught very little or completely overlooked. And I feel like even though we spend, time on the basics, letters and reading and writing and, math in some capacity. She's only 4.5, but we spend a lot of our time in the elective areas, in the things that connect to our energy, in the music and the art and the sculpting and the molding and the building and the creating, and we're bringing forward the sacred geometry when we talk about letters and then numbers, and how everything is just so interconnected. And I was never taught any of this in school. I mean, all of this, other than, some basic art, I had to learn as an adult. And so I feel like it's such a gift to be able to give children this opportunity to really, like you were saying, have that sovereignty of knowing themselves, not their personality only and what they prefer and what their strengths and weaknesses are, but also their energy body and what that means, and the energy of the flower and what that means. And that was
Yeah.
a lot in one response, but
No, but it's important because I think it's a lot of it has to do with education. A lot of people just don't know. A lot of the adults, the educators, they don't know about
right.
energy. They don't know how it contributes, and it's a major part of us, of our lives.
Absolutely. And but then once you do know, you can't unknow that. And so it's something that is completely imperative for me to teach to my daughter, so she goes through life having this knowingness at a deeper level of who she is, and
Mhm.
how to have power over her own self with that, and understanding she can shift the emotions in her body by focusing on different colors, or eating food of different colors, or by releasing thoughts that she has and calling in I mean, like, how genius is that? But it's so basic, and we all have the power to do it for ourselves. And if children are taught this, then everything else that doesn't serve them just goes away.
Yeah, it actually supports positive self-esteem,
Absolutely.
and I that's like lacking in our education system.
Right.
So many children are affected by this. Stacy, can you share with us your story as far as why you chose homeschooling for your children? And that was a recent choice because Tiffany's been had done that already. Can you share with us again with the audience your
Yes.
decision?
In Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude.
Look at your thoughts on respecting gratitude. Mhm.
My young sister is going to accompany me with sharing our journey.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
my oldest will be 7 this year, and so for us, we didn't really have to navigate the realm of homeschooling until recently, when it kind of manifests beautifully. So
Mm.
for us, we started homeschooling because everything was remote due to the COVID-19 virus occurring. And so for us, we just really jumped right into it. Um, Throughout her development and throughout her life, yes, honey, throughout her life, she had been doing homeschool. Your water's in there, baby. Go get it. She had been doing homeschooling. It wasn't titled homeschooling. It was just everyday learning. And that was something Tiffany spoke on last call. It was just her happening. Like we would take walks and it would be, what do you see? What color is the sky? What is this? Let's play I Spy. So when it happened in 2020, it became more formal. What I did was I brought a lot of what I was practicing inside the classroom with my students into our house, into our home.
Can you tell us
At
again what you do so that those who weren't at the last discussion, what is your
Absolutely. So we start with a morning message. We talk about different topics. We integrated a lot of yoga and meditation, Ho'oponopono. But social emotional learning was so big for me because as a young child and teenager, I really struggled with anxiety and depression. So it's certain things that I saw within my daughter that I wanted to kind of really stop in its tracks. So I wanted to really focus on that. We would
and what
talk
is
about.
your profession too? You're a special education teacher as well too?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
So
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
honey.
sorry.
No, you're fine. So I served as a special education teacher. So within that, a lot of my focus is social emotional learning and
Mm.
helping students to develop. Yes, honey.
Yeah, she has something to say. You should say it.
So a lot of my focus comes into the everyday living. So funny enough, when I was finishing my master's for teaching, I was pregnant with my daughter. So a lot of the learnings that I was taking in, I was starting to implement it before she was even here on the earth plane.
Mm,
So when she's here, it became second nature. And as I spoke on last week, my students are extension of me and my other children, as I like to call them.
mm,
So whatever I was doing with them or whatever I saw within them that I saw within my own children, I would make sure I kind of pieced it together so that for oneness, everybody was really being uplifted. Everybody's good was really being focused on.
mm-hmm,
So again, her attitude with adjustments, like we as adults were struggling with everything that was occurring. So for children, it was even greater a challenge for them to conceptualize what was happening, the changes.
mm,
So noticing some of those things, like I really wanted to be fun because I remember in school when it was fun, not for very long, but I wanted to ensure that she loved learning, not school necessarily, not education system, but that her learning passion would just grow with her age. Um, so thinking through what I would practice within the school building, I brought it into our home practice, but I also was mindful of where she was developmentally, knowing that the school day is exhaustive for teachers, especially students.
mm-hmm.
So thinking about a reading block can be for 120 minutes, 2 hours of reading. Like that's, I
Yeah,
understand
yeah, for young kids, that's actually very hard to do for them to really
exactly.
focus. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of the other issues of, oh, well, that student has ADHD or that student has
Mm-hmm.
this. And it's just, again, is that developmentally appropriate? Are they supposed to sit still? I do not sit still as a grown woman. Why would you expect still? It's a reason that they're moving. Their body is speaking to them. Their body is trying to communicate something. And I think that's something that's so lost within the field. And it's something that needs to really be respected. Um,
Yeah,
what?
I have a friend whose mother was a elementary school teacher, and what she told me she did was, as before they started school, she had the children play for like 15, 20 minutes, just run out in the yard when school started, just run for, or maybe it was an hour, I don't know. So by the time they were done, by that hour, they came back in, they were completely quiet in their chairs and attentive to what she had to, the lessons that she had to teach,
And
you know.
that's important parts right there. The fact that they went out, they were in nature, they were outside connecting. That
Hmm.
is huge. That is missing within our school system. And there are plenty of studies showing how nature and fresh air and kids being able to see the trees and the plants can enhance their cognitive abilities. And the
Hmm.
fact that they're negating that on purpose at times is very saddening because again, these students are in a building for 8 hours without
Yeah,
access to sunlight for all the nourishment that they need within their skin, especially for melanated students.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
fresh air that they are not receiving because it's the stagnant air within the building, and we know how energy just is stagnant as well. So the fact that the students are able to go outside and then to be able to move their bodies and engage with their bodies, connect with their bodies, and connect with nature as well. That is huge. And
yeah, yeah.
if time allows, I'll touch on that a little bit later. But
Okay. That's actually very important. Now, how, all right, so you just started homeschooling. Your oldest daughter, was she in the traditional conventional school system first? Because she's what, 7 years old?
she'll be 7. So no, I was fortunate to have my mother and father watch my daughter during the day when I was going into the
Oh,
building. So
okay.
she would do reading while she was here, and she did a lot of playing. So that was something that she was fortunate to have. Again,
Oh,
we didn't put her into daycare just because Sorry.
Because of the COVID. Because of COVID.
Well, because of COVID, but even prior to that, I saw some of the conditions that the daycares were in.
Uh-huh.
Um, saw what some of the conditions the instructors or caregivers were bringing into the space. I
Hmm.
didn't want her to be subjected to that. I was very particular, as some people like to say, about who was around her because I was aware of energy. Even before I started my full transition into the work, I'm very aware of people's energy, and I'm very aware of how it can attach to people and especially children. So
Mm.
my parents kept my daughter and eventually my son and other daughter. But I would tell my parents like, well, can you do this with them? Like, can you go outside? And they're really good with taking them out in nature. They
Mm-hmm.
live next to a forest reserve, so they would take hikes and bike ride throughout the woods, and that was as we are serenaded by my son. So she's
So,
not traditional school. So she has not had that experience yet.
okay.
And
Okay.
ideally she will not. So that is the plan.
Okay. Well, as you've learned now, there are solutions to how what we can do to protect our children so that you don't have to be concerned about those outside forces, that those negative forces that can affect that we feel and will affect us to then affect our children. So Tiffany, your journey is a little bit different. Oh, Stephanie, did you want to say something before I move on to Tiffany?
Yes, I just wanted to interject something. With Tiffany, I want to touch upon that, what she was speaking about, us not being taught, that we were energy or
Mm-hmm.
that we are energy. Do you all remember the song Doe, a deer, a female deer,
Mm-hmm.
Ray? Do you remember that song?
Yep, a drop of golden sun.
Yeah, those are actually the frequencies,
Oh yeah, they are. You're
but they
absolutely.
never told us that.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I was reading or watching something about how what Stacy was saying about the 8 hours, that the children are in class. All of that was specifically designed for us to be in that mode when we, graduated and went into the workforce and
Mm-hmm.
all of that is to be ingrained in us so
Yeah.
that, we're in this whole system.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about that too, and how actually the educational system, the school systems were like babysitters, so people can actually go into that work grind, that 8-hour work grind, and they had somebody watching the kids. But then you're right, also training the children to be employees for someone or some institution and so forth. So that's interesting. Tiffany, do you have, I know you've got stuff to share with us, more information.
I always have stuff to share. Um, but what Stacy was sharing at the end there about protecting her child from, outside frequencies and negative and low vibrational energies, that's the whole reason we chose to homeschool.
Mm,
We understood. I had never intended on it until I knew too much to not, to be honest. And um, and so we stepped into it not really knowing what and how we were going to do it, but just knowing that we needed to protect her childhood and, and to have some sort of say and control, for lack of a better word. I don't know what other word to use with that right now, about who was in her energetic field.
mm,
We weren't about to just go drop her somewhere and there'd be 20 other children that were all vibrating at different levels based on what they experienced at home, what they watched on TV, what was in the car when they were coming. It's just a
yeah,
lot for a little tiny sponge, and so and not to mention, I mean, we've talked about this before, and maybe this is a conversation for later, but the low vibrational energies that are in a school, match that
yeah,
of, you know, they have to be cleared at a very, very deep level. And so
Oh, yeah.
once they match the energies of hospitals and cemeteries and all sorts of things. And so I wasn't just going to let her be in that environment without having the tools herself to know how to, energetically kung fu it all.
Yeah.
So, but one thing that people ask me a lot, um, that I've started to think about a lot recently, and was one of my trepidations at the beginning, was how are you going to actually homeschool and teach all of this? Like, who are you? You're an English teacher. What do you really know about anything, to teach you other than just your life experiences? And I'm starting to really realize that we teach her what our strengths are, but then we outsource what our strengths aren't that she still wants to learn. Neither of us are fluent Spanish speakers, but she was interested in Spanish, and so we found a group of children who were learning how to speak Spanish, and we meet up with those children, and the Spanish teacher who teaches her Spanish, and we also are creating classes around things that are our strengths, So I'm teaching a bee class that she's involved in and other children are involved in, an herb class that, she's learning about herbs and other children are learning about, all different components of how to grow medicine for their own bodies. And so, we are teaching our strengths, and my husband, is very artistic and musically inclined, and so he's the art and the math teacher, or I mean, music. Well, he's better at math than I am too. So, but so you know, we just we hone our strengths and help her develop those within herself, and then we outsource what we need more assistance with. And I think one of the biggest concerns people have up front is how do you do it all? Well, we're never supposed to do it all. Even if they're in traditional school all day long, you're not expected to have the school do it all either. It's
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
that saying, it takes a village. And so, you know, um, we talked last week about how everything and everyone is a teacher always, whether it's the squirrel or the butterfly or the plant or the neighbor next door who speaks Spanish.
Yes, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about also, children who then don't fall under those that cookie cutter education and their label as ADHD, and as a result, they end up medicating these children, and the long-term effects behind it. And I do have, I had gotten to a discussion with a couple of people with regarding that. I don't know if, Anahara, are you willing to share your story with regards to that? Because I know, Tiffany, you talked about you had high schoolers who were on Alderall and they were actually selling it if they didn't use it.
Absolutely. I mean, the ones who were prescribed it were very resistant to take it because it changed who they were. And nobody wants to be changed from who they are. They want to learn how to work within who they are, and how to understand themselves more. And then, other they were selling it to kids who wanted to feel different than who they were sometimes. And so it was just this whole cycle of uh, low vibrational
Right.
energy.
Right, right. And before you say anything, Anahara, because yours story is very interesting, I wanted to ask Serenia if you can share your experiences with the children as a school nurse, what the children were saying when those that were medicated.
Yes, Invocation Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. I was thinking about everything that everyone was saying today, and in addition to last week, and I was thinking about how I would observe the children on different level. The teachers we would talk, they would talk to me, and I was just thinking about if I can mention really quickly about the whole recess and going out and that. I just think back to when we were little. We had recess twice a day, and we had gym every day. And
Yes.
so, and so speaking to what Stacy and Tiffany were both saying that. So those children are always very antsy. The children that would come to my office with the symptoms and things like that, they never got a chance really to go out, and they started using recess as a punishment. So if they did something, then they would hold them in for recess, and I was a big fighter against that. I was like a big, very vocal about that kind of stuff. And I would write letters and I would go to the principal's office, for my own students and for the own students there. But back to and the food and all of that's a whole nother story. But
Mm-hmm.
the children who were medicated, they were many of them were either zombie like, in many cases they went from very, very hyper to either zombie like or very irritated because the medications didn't always work like they wanted to. Some of them would have adverse reactions and they would become hostile and volatile and violent,
Mm-hmm.
and I would talk to some of the parents about it, and call some of the physicians, and they would say, well, just continue the medicine, my doctor is telling me to work through it, and I'm like, this is an adverse reaction. That means it's not supposed to happen. And that
Yeah.
means this is,
And
I
I
mean, if
just,
you
I just wonder. I'm not sure if I read though, but the shooter, he had issues himself from the Uvalde
mhm.
shooting, mass shooting in Uvalde, California, elementary
Mhm.
school shooting. A lot of these people, instead of dealing with the problem, they just kind of push it aside, and expect you to just follow a system and just become medicated in order to continue to follow it.
Yeah, well, if you don't get to go outside or exercise, then you're gonna be hyper too. I mean, like
Yeah.
Stacy and Tiffany were saying. I mean, who sits at? I always just try to tell the teachers and the psychologists and some of the other folks that were social workers that were trying to get me to agree with the medicating the students. I'd be like, do you sit at your desk for 8 hours
Yeah, I used to
in the
get up.
same seat?
Yep.
Do you, or if someone asks you to do that, would that be okay with you?
Right.
Just
Right.
to stay in your square,
Right.
I mean, so I hope that answered, any questions about how the students were. They were just, they're not very happy. They would not want to take the medicine. I wouldn't want to give it. And when we'd be in the meetings and they would ask me, yes, nurse, don't you agree with them getting medication? I'd be like, no, I do not. There are
Right.
other ways to do it. And they look at me all shocked and I'd be like, well, you
Right.
asked, so then
Right. Right.
that's what you get.
Right. So on a horror.
Well,
Oh,
and the
go ahead.
whole
Go ahead, Tiffany.
so I just quickly I wanted to say that the whole reason behind medication for children right now in the first place is to make them all have the same experience, to make them all be the ones who will just sit and listen. And everyone's different every day. I mean, some days I do want to curl up and read a book for 3 hours. Some days my 4-year-old wants to sit and look at books or be read to for an hour, 2 hours. Sometimes she wants to write for an hour. Sometimes she wants to do it for 3 minutes and then run all day long. It's just, it, what a beautiful world if we could all just have an individualized education for what works for us, and
Mhm.
have control and say over it. Um, I mean, the world would be a different place, obviously. But
Yeah.
but in my experience, it was more to have the kids sit down and stop talking, and have them be taught the exact same way as the person next to them, in front of them, and behind them. And it's
Right.
so unrealistic.
Right. Right. Exactly. So Anahara, I apologize. You were about to start to speak. Are you ready, Anahara?
I am ready. And
Mm-hmm.
Locution Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude,
And
everyone.
Veritas, without respect and gratitude.
So I'm speaking today as an adult, obviously, who was one of those children who had that experience of being medicated and over medicated because I was quote unquote ADHD and too much to handle. And I have vivid memories of being overdosed by a mother who was stressed out because she had 5 kids she couldn't control. And sitting there, people have mentioned the kids that it makes them feel dead on the inside. Well, it makes you feel dead on the outside because you're sitting there like a zombie because you've been medicated and you're just kind of like sitting there like a sack of potatoes lumped up against the wall and everyone's laughing at you. Gee, I wonder why kids go out and start shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Bullying. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Bullied by the parents, bullied by the siblings, bullied by the classmates. So it does have long term detrimental effects. I'm not good enough. Why do I have to take this medication? And I swore I would never do that if I had a child. Well, lo and behold, here comes Jonathan. Jonathan was, of course, ADHD as well. And he had food allergies and he would run around in circles. He couldn't sit still in class. And it was a matter of you either put him on this medication or you're going to have to take him out of the school. And we're going to have to put him in special ed because he needs extra attention. And it had regretted doing that to my child, but he had the same type of effects where it was, what's wrong with me? Why do I have to take this medicine? There's nothing wrong with me. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with you. But when he would take the medication, he was smarter. He could have a conversation. He'd be able to speak in full sentences. He could sit down and finish a puzzle. So it's one screwed up part of the system feeds another screwed up part of the system, which is very, very upsetting because many adults who were those kids, as I was, with the ADHD and taking all the different types of medication, um, grow up and have kids just like them. And
Yeah.
also, as a an side note, when I have vivid memories of going into the speak with, you had to go to the psychologist, the psychiatrist, and they would prescribe the medication once a month, and sitting there and looking back as an adult saying, oh, I guess I shouldn't have said that I see mention some of the things that I would see. I see things moving across the room. I see things moving on the floor. Ooh, we got a hot one here. Quick, get the prescription book. She sees
Oh,
things
wow.
too. So
Mm-hmm.
yes. So it's extremely unfortunate. We're not cookie cutters. We're humans. We're human, and the diversity of this magnificent world, this planet that we're living on, needs to be valued rather than everyone trying to change it and make everyone the same Play-Doh person.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And that's kind of how you feel. You kind of feel like Play-Doh.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you. And Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and
And like
gratitude.
Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. Yes, Serenia. Oh, Stacy. Do you either?
Okay.
Yes, I just want to thank Anahara for sharing her story and seeing the how it all kind of continues. As I spoke last week, I had an IEP for speech services, and come forward, my daughter saw a speech therapist for her, speech, and my son will likely have to, have the same services rendered. But something that really kind of comes to mind, and which also helped make the decision for us to homeschool, is environments. We don't really talk about environments that much. And I think about some of my students that had ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
that were heavily medicated, having been on the other side of, those hostile, aggressive moments. It is hard in that moment in the profession. But at the same time, like, those were the moments where I had to take a step back. Like, what is this child, what is this baby trying to communicate to me? They're telling me that they're not themselves. They are out of control. And after, the students were able to de-escalate and regulate, they're kind of like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't even know what happened. Like, I was not in control. And so something that, partnering with Serenia in those times, like, we would start lavender. We need the lavender diffusers. And something even more recently, like, I would have a Ponopono playing in the background as I saw students. I would have different music that I know would calm them playing, and having different things, like maybe they have a coloring sheet with them, to get them started, just to settle their mind. And then we get to the work. We take multiple breaks. And that's something that's not really valued. And I think that every student should have a IEP, in the sense of that it's individualized for every student,
Because
not that
yeah, right, right. It's an individualized and not, but it's stigmatized though. That's the
exactly,
issue. They stigmatize it in our public school system. That's the problem. 'Cause,
absolutely.
my daughter had an IEP, and I I was actually totally against it when it was being implemented. It was just one teacher that said go ahead and have her get that so that she can get the services or whatever that she needs. But I knew that it had no reflection on her intelligence level. It's just the way they taught. And so I was in there fighting all the time with these teachers and instructors. But and then I finally came at peace, and now she's an adult, and now I know what her gifts are, and she knows what her gifts are you know
Absolutely. As we, as in a lot of my doctoral classes, we say that Gen Ed is the issue. Like a lot of
yeah,
the teachers, and love to my Gen Ed coworkers and colleagues. But a lot of times it's that the teachers are overwhelmed and they don't know what to
yeah,
do. So
they are.
therefore, let me
Yeah.
put them somewhere. And it's just like, but you wouldn't want to be excluded. So why do you think this child that's developing emotions and their sense of community wants to be excluded? So a
Right.
lot of times, like for me, I really had to work hard and I had to be very mindful of I am their safe space.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that they can articulate what is upsetting them and not try to change or control their narratives, but
Mm-hmm.
to really tap into. So, like, I used to be an anime fan. So, one of my students loved Naruto. So, we would talk about Naruto. Naruto is going to be a part of the math problem for the day. And that
Yeah.
was okay because he was learning and that was the intent. So, connecting it back to homeschooling, the beautiful thing is that I had control over the environment within my home, within my space. So I can make sure that my children are embraced and nurtured within that space, which I don't have, influence on within the school building. And a lot of times the environment is altered because there is lack of understanding of the people that are in front of you and
Mm-hmm.
how to really feed into a nurturing energy that will sustain all the energies and all the souls that are in front of you. Like the temperaments are important to understand. Well, this student probably came in without no breakfast this morning. This
Mm-hmm.
student probably witnessed their parents fighting. This student might, and having to balance all that and being able to again manage that in the home setting of I know my children, I know what they're consuming in terms of media, I know what they're witnessing, I can address that better. A lot of
Yeah.
times school professionals cannot address all the multitude of issues and things that the students are facing, and that's where a lot of these problematic diagnoses come in, and it
Yeah,
continues
they,
like these
they don't
things
even know
are.
what to do with it. They don't even, that's when they come up with these diagnoses, and the people who come up with the diagnoses, they don't know what to do with it, so they just give them a medication. We do have a solution. One way is to clear the space, because the space is not conducive for learning for these children. It's not safe. We've got these energies that are rampant within our spaces. We talk about property clearing, and the reason why we do property clearing, because there are these low vibrations that affect all of us at the subatomic level. It's all about quantum physics, and with property clearing, we clear properties in our homes. We can clear areas, other places, spaces, schools. That was another, I guess, I don't know if you call it like a discipline that we were clearing. We were clearing, there's levels of property clearing, but now it's just property clearing the homes. We clear commercial buildings, we clear schools, but clearing the schools are important so that we have a safe space for our children, as an alternative. If you can't, um, if you can't keep them home, if a homeschooling, that's an option for people. And then also too, as you brought in doing diffusing lavender, doing those things to kind of calm them in the environment. But from what I understand, in a public education school system, you're not allowed to do that. You're
No,
restricted.
oh,
Go ahead, Serenia.
yes, and yes, and you're not supposed to do that. I mean, it's not from a perspective of you're not supposed to have it going in the classroom just because of the allergies, et cetera, that children have. But I would do um, I wonder respond to a couple of things. Stacy said and also with my son. One of my sons has a diagnosis as well as ADD, and it really. I told him, I talked to the doctor about it because he has the symptoms that, not inattentiveness and up and down with the scores and that kind of thing. And I would say to him, I told him, you don't have ADHD, and I would tell all the teachers, I would talk to the students that would come in. I'm like, you don't have ADHD. That's a label that they put on you so that they can describe a particular behavior that they don't know how to deal with, and it's induced from the system. It's induced
Mm-hmm.
from the education, teaching people how to not identifying their personal, as we've said before, identifying their personal strengths. And the creatives tend to be more ADHD type
Mm-hmm.
diagnoses
Mm-hmm.
because they learn very differently. A lot of boys tend to be ADHD diagnoses because their energies are the, and then I always said, this is how I look at it from an energetic perspective. To me, medicating the children with so-called ADHD really is suppressing the energies
Mm-hmm.
of the students and actually suppressing the energy of the youth and preventing the universe from being the earth from being a place where people think outside of the box, because creatives think outside of the box and they're open to learning and they can get messages from the universe, and so when you medicate them they can't hear anything.
Right, right. You're right. Absolutely right. And does anyone have any other comments? We brought up a lot, and I like how we tied energy of ours. And like Ishn Veritas, honor, respect, and
And
gratitude.
like Veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude. I just gotta say thank you to all of those who contributed to this conversation and last week's. So I was excited. We got a part two, and I could definitely resonate with everything. I shared with a few others last week that um, the conversation was so good. I didn't want to interrupt, and it was the same thing this time. And there were questions that I had that I wanted to present, and then people were bringing them up, and so it
Mm-hmm.
was like I was there, and it felt so great, and it was a similar effect now. I just want to touch on something from my own personal experience. Uh, the term ADHD is just so cringe, and I think Serenia articulated it quite well. It's we are being placed into a system, a homogenized system, and that's just the label they're placing on you when you don't fit into that rigid, homogenized system. And somewhere throughout my personal experience, you know, I wasn't labeled with ADHD, but I recall like having gifted courses, and then at some point I just fell off where there was no interest in the curriculum. And I'm a creative. Many of those on the line know I'm an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just draw in class all day. Like that's all I would do, and nothing ever really interested me. And then when I look back on my experience in school, and I think, man, beyond addition, subtraction, basic multiplication, I didn't really learn anything.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing that really prepared me for life. And then even, the idea of cultivating my gifts, that wasn't even touched on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, so when I see people taking the initiative to give the children what they need, not this, I think someone used the term cookie cutter. We're not. We're all unique individuals, and we all require different types of learning. And it's important that we honor that so that we can cultivate the souls that will contribute to this planet in such a unique way that's beyond someone who's coming out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I give thanks, gratitude, honor, respect to everyone who contributed to this conversation. It was just so it I'll just leave it there. I'm in
Okay.
gratitude for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the accolades. I appreciate it very much. All right, Tiffany.
I just wanted to bring something forward that came to mind as Anahara and then Stacy and even Serenia were saying, I dealt with X, Y, and Z issue growing up, and then of course my child had X, Y, or Z, quote unquote issue that had to be worked through. And I think that so often we forget in life that our children choose us for a reason, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and because we've walked the path. And so even if we're not on the other side of whatever it is, it's an opportunity for either us to also go through that with them, or you know, for us to heal ourselves as we assist in, you know, them moving through those growths and, you know, weaknesses and whatever it is. But I think that I'm reminded of that constantly, you know, all the time when I'm realizing my daughter is trying to take control of every situation, and it is frustrating me, and I'm realizing that I haven't really honed all of my control issues. And so, you know, it just really, it's this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful mirror of held up in front of us of, you know, what not only needs to be worked through and healed and strengthened within ourselves, but then also how we can help them, you know, through that. And I think that when we separate, especially at a young age, the parents and children, there's a huge missing link, you know, that everyone came here to learn from each other with. And if we separate that out, then that whole component isn't there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that comment. You know, a lot is being said. We do have solutions, at least identifying the problem, and we do have options as far as how we can then shift our teachings, our instructions to our children to, you know, to maintain their self-esteem. I actually want to share the story of how, you know, schooling your home, that the story, Stacy, on how your daughter dealt with anger. You can share that again. That was like so cool with her brother.
Absolutely.
Basically.
So, uh, sorry, her brother's in my face right now, giving me kisses. So as she was adjusting to having a younger sibling, she would get upset. Like her fists would ball up. And over the time, she had heard me practicing Ho'oponopono. And so it was something that she picked up from just, you know, being near the frequency. And so she just started to say it herself. And it was a beautiful sight to see her really just step into using such a powerful tool. And she integrated it effortlessly without me teaching her, without me telling her explicitly. So so she continues to use it, and it's just one of those, like, be aware of your body, be aware of where your energy is. Like, I remember we did a lesson on good vibes one day, and so it's like, oh well, do you have good vibes? How can you get back to your good vibrations? Like, what do you need to do? And she will go back to it. So
Mm.
now the younger does it, and even the baby will do her rendition of it as well. So we use all the
So cute.
time. we, I even play the song in the car, especially if they're a little riled up, just to kind of let them know that that they. Thank you. That, you know, we need to recenter and find balance within ourselves.
Right, right, right. Thank you for that wonderful story. You know, I mean, they are a reflection of us. They learn from us. They actually pick up uh, what we do and not necessarily what we say. You know, that's one thing I learned about my children. Go ahead, Serenia. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I was just want to say about Stacy. I like the story about when Miles said something to you about energy. Do you remember?
The most recent.
Yeah. So I was just saying how when they learn about energy, what it means, um and they can articulate it. And he's only 3, right?
Yes.
And what did he tell you? Would you do you mind, Delilah, if she
Oh
shares
yeah,
that story?
please, please.
One day we were just sitting, and Mouse was like, "Well, mommy, the magic's not working because of you." And I was like, "Oh, excuse me." And he was just like, "The magic's not working because of you." And I was like, "What else can I say after that? Like, let me go do some reflection. Let me go do some meditation, because he's more connected to source than I was being.
So he said the bathroom wasn't working because of you and
No,
your energy.
the
Oh, the man.
magic wasn't. because of
Oh,
me.
okay, the magic. Oh.
The magic. And I was just like, okay, I received that message and let me go away from that.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's so cool. All right. Well, are there any other comments? Before we go, we're just about at the hour. This was really helpful. We may end up having like another discussion because what I want to do is discuss the aftermath as far as us being adults, becoming adults, and how our educational system, how we turn out as adults after being exposed to this, and what we could do to shift that frequency if we're not at the frequency that we want to be. So we can talk about that.
And how
Tiffany?
much we've had to unlearn. How much
Right,
we've had to unlearn, right, in order to like learn what really makes a difference. And
right,
um,
right.
one thing that that parents, whether they're homeschooling or are thinking about homeschooling, always bring forward to me is, so like, what does a day look like, right? Like, what's the rhythm of the day, the week, the year, and how do you go about that? So I mean, it's a long discussion, but maybe in a future discussion we can just share different components that for people to kind of step into at different levels, and the
Mm-hmm.
difference
Mm-hmm.
between homeschool versus just life, and is it really different, and I mean
Yeah, we can probably bring this up next week because that's what I want to discuss. Children become adults, which are us. So what happens after being exposed to those experiences, and then how does it transpire into our present day life and our experiences? And if we're not at the pitch that we want to be in, then what do we do in order to shift it? And there are things that we can do in order to shift it. So, um, you know, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Tiffany and Stacy, for sharing with us, your experiences again regarding homeschooling children and your experiences on the educational system. I'd like to thank Anahara for sharing your story, Serenia, you know, and it's helpful to hear everyone else's experiences. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and Tavares. So I'd like to remind everyone that about our whole responsibility meditation sessions, something that will help to shift our experiences, hosted by Enlica Studios, held on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Time for only 30 minutes. You can join us tapping into the power of an Ho'oponopono, a powerful technique of forgiveness, reconciliation, and gratitude, assisting in shifting the trajectory of our life experiences into something greater. This is run by hosted by the Enlica Studio 1, Enlica Studio 2, and Enlica Studio 4, as well as Donna Corneal. Excuse me, Donna Corneal. I also like to remind everyone that we are still hosting, we have our Divine Nation sessions given on most Fridays. I'm not sure if this next Friday is one. I think there is, but they're only 1 hour. They're great workshops working with the Call for Truth Divination decks, answering questions about ourselves, circumstances around us, questions about others, providing information that's limitless. And the workshop is completely free, as well as the whole responsibility meditation. So I encourage everyone to sign up and join these sessions. You could actually just join the whole responsibility sessions. The next one is at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Again, thank you, Tiffany and Stacy, and everyone for joining us here in Clubhouse. I look forward to seeing everyone again next week so we can have further discussion on this topic and other topics. It's just a wealth of information and knowledge. Remember that knowledge is power, and taking action on this knowledge is what is true power. So with honor, respect, and gratitude, everyone, and Lakesh and Veritas.
And Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. Thank you.
Cash, Veritas,
And
and
Lakesh and Veritas,
gratitude.
with honor, respect, and gratitude.
In the Cushion Veritas, the honor, respect, and gratitude.